Muhammad was not a size queen. So there is a sort of thing floating around online that Muhammad was essentially gangbanged by 30 black guys. Uh, and it's total nonsense. It's not something taken seriously by different scholars. But let us sort of get into this. So I'm going to present an argument, yes, drawing on legitimate scholarship, but also grounded in the philosophy of Martin Heidegger, to dispute this sort of line of reasoning, this internet myth, if you will. So, in terms of Martin Heidegger, the key issue is how beings show up in understanding. And so, Martin Heidegger distinguishes between being, sein, the condition that lets things appear as meaningful, and beings, which is scientes, particular entities, so events, people, claims, etc. So, the claim X event happened is not just a fact, it is a mode of disclosure. It only appears as meaningful within an interpretive framework, hermeneutic horizon, as you would sort of refer to it. So the real question becomes, within what horizon does this claim even make sense? So we can easily dismiss this as idle talk or gerede. So Heidegger's concept of gerede, that is, idle talk, is crucial. So idle talk is language detached from grounded understanding, repetition without authentic relation to sources, and driven by circulation, not truth. So this claim emerges from internet polemic, such as Alex Jones and various others, depends on mistranslation and decontextualization. That's an important thing to understand. It spreads because it is shocking, not because it is well grounded. So, in Heideggerian terms, the claim exists primarily as gerede, not as disclosed truth. So, misinterpretation is failure of hermeneutics. So, Martin Heidegger builds on hermeneutics, that is, interpretation theory. So, understanding always involves historical context, language structure, and pre-understanding. Here's the breakdown. So, first off, there is the element of linguistic failure. So, the Arabic verb, often translated as ride, is what's known as polysemous, multiple meanings. So, commonly non-sexual, crowding, pressing, climbing, etc. So this needs to be taken into account. So a sort of Heideggerian way of framing it would be to say that the interpreter projects a modern sexualized meaning onto a pre-modern linguistic structure. That's important. Historical failure. So the narrative belongs to a religious cosmology involving jinn. Funny how they don't mention that. They don't mention the fact that he preached the Quran to 30 different jinn in one night. So this story belongs to a particular cosmology that we just don't exist within today. There is also the fact that it's a 7th century semantic world. The sensational reading ignores that world and substitutes a modern pornographic imagination. C. Collapse of the hermeneutic circle. And so, for Martin Heidegger, interpretation must move between part and whole, but here a single ambiguous word, ride, is isolated. The broader textual and cultural whole is ignored, and the result is distorted disclosure of meaning. So, we have being versus beings. The claim lacks ontological grounding. So, Martin Heidegger would say, does this claim arise from an authentic disclosure of beings, or from a fallen mode of interpretation. This claim does not arise from primary sources. Understood in context, it does not cohere with the broader textual tradition and does not align with established scholarly interpretations. And so ontologically, it is a derivative construct, not a properly disclosed event. So the role of Verfallen, okay? So Mathur Heidegger says humans tend toward curiosity, ambiguity, and idle talk. So curiosity, chasing novelty, shock, ambiguity, flattening distinctions, and idle talk. This claim fits all three when you think about it. Curiosity, it's sensational. Ambiguity exploits a vague word, and idle talk spreads without verification. So, therefore, it is a textbook example of Verfallen in discourse. And so, the secular sort of scholarly grounding, even without Mathur Heidegger, the report is weak or disputed, the wording is ambiguous, classical scholars do not interpret it sexually, the 30 men element comes from unrelated traditions, and so the Heideggerian analysis aligns perfectly with standard academic method. The philology, historiography, and source criticism. So, these sort of different things. And so, the final sort of Heideggerian formulation that I would like to offer in order to debunk this sort of nonsense is the claim that Muhammad was sexually involved with 30 black men is not an authentic disclosure of a historical event, but a product of gerede, idle talk, arising from a fallen interpretive mode. It results from the projection of modern meanings onto pre-modern language, the severing of text from its hermeneutic horizon, and the circulation of ambiguity driven by curiosity rather than grounded understanding. As such, it lacks ontological grounding as a disclosed being and should be dismissed as a derivative distortion rather than a legitimate historical claim. That is what I would argue, and for those of you that are actually interested in reading about the history of Islam and the different hadiths and so on and so forth, I would like to present to you three scholars. So we have Jonathan A.C. Brown, we have Harold Motzki, and we have Gregor Scheuler. And so these scholars are relevant because they talk about the tradition of hadith and they bring the tools of scholarship to the subject of hadith and explain it to a wider audience. So that is why I recommend actual scholars rather than online sort of edgelords trying to get one over on another religion. Thank you for listening. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.